Hello again. This is Satan's Trilogy, reading 52. It is book 1, chapter 6, and we're nearing the conclusion of the first book. I am the author and the narrator. Sit back, relax, and listen as the story unfolds. Brandy hadn't bothered to close the bathroom door, and as she took care of her morning routine, Esther and Day laughed and went back to the kitchen. Esther had told Brandy as she left, "You are going to love breakfast." Raven, Day, and Riley Grace were looking around the kitchen and checking out the food when Brandy came out of the hallway. "How's that for record-setting time?" Brandy said as she entered the living room and made her way to the kitchen area. Wearing a pink silk shoestring blouse and matching panties, Brandy looked amazingly hot. Her long legs and slender tummy were only overshadowed by her wealth of bosom. Brandy looked good, fit, and sexy. The girls were all in disbelief and admiration. Esther seemed not aware of Brandy's sexuality and quickly commented, "And Brandy, I am absolutely shocked that you are ready for breakfast in such short notice." Laughing at herself, Esther turned to Raven and Riley Grace. "And Brandy, this is Raven, Day, and I love her dearly. And this is Raven's sister, Riley Grace, who has just become my youngest friend." And Brandy quickly looked at the girls. "You are all so young and beautiful. It is wonderful to meet you all. I am afraid that I had too much pizza last night and went to bed early." "I hope you enjoyed the evening," said Aunt Brandy. Raven quickly spoke up. "It was a wonderful night, and Esther was the best of hosts." Riley Grace quickly added, "Oh yes, it was the most wonderful night of my life." Brandy walked up to Raven and looked her closely in the face. "When Esther says that she has a best friend, I know that person is someone special." Brandy grabbed Raven and gave her a big hug, then kissed her on the cheek. Taking a quick look at Riley Grace, Brandy added, "I have a feeling that I missed something last night. You girls didn't stay up all night talking about boys, did you?" Brandy thought she had just guessed what happened while she slept. Boy talk all night. Turning back to Riley Grace, Brandy asked, "So you had a great evening?" Riley Grace was so excited to share her happiness with someone that it was impossible for her to contain herself. "Oh yes, Esther was wonderful. We went to the amusement park and rode all of the rides and had cotton candy." Riley Grace caught her breath, then added, "I love cotton candy." Brandy was watching Riley Grace, then walked to her and gave her a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. Smiling, Brandy said, "I know for a fact that you have just joined the family. You girls are so young." Brandy looked about, then became distracted by the aromas from the kitchen table, waiting for everyone. Riley Grace, "Welcome aboard." Giving Riley a kiss on her forehead, Brandy said, "I am so hungry and excited. This is such a wonderful gathering." She then added, "Let's eat." Everyone laughed, and while they were all aware that Aunt Brandy had sensed the close-knit family of friends was permanent, they agreed with Brandy. It was time to eat. Brandy pulled Riley Grace close to her as they moved to the dining table and whispered into her ear, "I love your underwear." Brandy pulled Riley Grace closer to her side and kissed her cheek. Sitting down, everyone took a chair as if it had always belonged to them. The table was round and just big enough for the 5 girls. Brandy sat farthest from the kitchen. Day was on her left, and Esther sat to her right. Raven sat on Esther's right, and Riley Grace sat between Day and Raven. No one questioned the seating arrangement, and everyone started to help themselves to the food. Passing the dishes around the table, everyone had their breakfast heaped onto their plate within a minute or two. Brandy spoke first after enjoying a good portion of her meal. "Esther, as usual, your cooking has amazed me. Everything cooked perfectly and the flavors are wonderful, not to mention that the presentation was beautiful." Brandy took another bite of the flounder. A smile enveloped her face as she enjoyed the flavors. Esther was happy the meal was a success, and having tasted everything, had to agree the food was wonderful. Esther held a section of white toast and said, "Aunt Brandy, I had help this morning in the kitchen. Riley Grace tells me she loves cooking, and so she helped on all the dishes." Esther turned to Riley Grace and said, "We did well, Riley Grace. Everything was truly wonderful, and you were a big help." Riley Grace sat with a huge smile. She couldn't say a thing. The excitement of having helped prepare a great meal was perhaps the most satisfying moment of her life. Raven looked at Riley Grace and quickly commented, "Wow, maybe we should stop ordering pizzas and let you cook more often." Day, Brandy, and Esther burst out laughing at Raven's comments. Then Raven and Riley Grace joined in with the laughing. Brandy was smiling, looking around the table. She had Esther on her right and Day on her left. The bond she felt with Day was already strong. Raven and Riley Grace just fit perfectly with them. Brandy was experiencing the comfort of true family. The feelings that surround a person when they are part of something big and wonderful. Glancing at Esther and seeing her happiness with the table's breakfast event gave Brandy a shiver of comfort that she had realized had been missing since her brother joined the military. While laughing with the others, Esther was always aware of her surroundings, and she sensed Aunt Brandy's comfort she had experienced with her newfound family. Esther eventually was able to control her giggling and offered up a toast to the small group of girls. Raising her water glass, Esther said, "Let's toast." And everyone quickly grabbed the glass in front of them and held it high. "Here's to this very moment, the happiest time of my life." Esther held up her glass. Brandy said, "Wait, here's to my wonderful family." They added, "Here's to finding my sister and realizing my friends." Raven then spoke, "Here's to finding my sister and realizing my friends." Riley Grace spoke, "Here's to Aunt Brandy, the hottest girl at the table." Day said, "I'll drink to that," and everyone clinked the glasses and laughed wildly as they took a drink. and Brandy was blushing slightly when everyone heard a musical alarm go off in Brandy's room. It was her cell phone alerting her to a call from Dr. Song. The song was Doctor, Doctor. Brandy looked disinterested. It is Jacob. I'll ignore it. The phone stopped with the music and then started again. Esther smiled at her aunt and said, "It seems that the doctor would like a word with you." "It is your call, Aunt Brandy, but the doctor does seem really nice, not to mention persistent." Brandy smiled, jumped up, dashed off to the bedroom. A few moments later, Brandy returned. "Well, Esther, Jacob wants to fly me to New York for the day. He has tickets to see a Broadway musical." Esther saw that Aunt Brandy was undecided with the invitation. So she commented, "Well, it is Saturday, and Day and I are working a big portion of it. A day in New York City could be wonderful, and Dr. Song seems a gentleman." Esther smiled and repeated herself, "A day in New York could be great fun." Brandy was thinking. She looked about the table and witnessed Day Raven and Riley Grace sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for her decision. "I'll do it." Brandy jumped up and started to circle the table, first giving Day a hug and kiss, then Riley Grace, Raven, and finally she hugged Esther. Looking Esther straight on, Brandy said, "We'll be very late when I get back, so don't worry. I'll text you if there are any delays." Holding onto Esther, Brandy turned to the other girls still sitting at the table. Taking a moment to look each girl in the eye, Brandy commented, "This was great fun. I love you all." Then Brandy was off to her end of the house. Everyone was thrilled at Brandy's decision and eagerly watched as the action unfolded. Day was the first to comment, "I don't understand why Aunt Brandy isn't married with 2 or 3 children. She is wonderful, not to mention sexy." Esther smiled. "I wonder the same thing, but we all travel different roads through life, and for some reason, Aunt Brandy's road has been different than what we might expect." Esther sat back down at the table and poured herself some water. Another cell phone sounded. This time it was for Raven. She had her smartphone on the edge of the counter, and so she jumped up to answer it, knowing that the musical song of it, "It Goes Back to Dad" by Black Gothic Band, was her dad's ringtone. Raven answered accordingly. "Good morning, Dad. It's so good to hear from you. Are you home?" Raven was listening to a long response and eventually looked to Riley Grace. "Dad wants to take us to the movies today. Are you interested?" Riley Grace quickly responded, "Are you kidding? That sounds wonderful." Raven smiled at Riley Grace, then spoke to her father on the phone. "I think we can be home in less than an hour." Raven listened for a moment, then responded, "Okay, Dad. We'll see you then." Raven was again herself, and she was excited. Speaking to Riley Grace, she said, "Okay, Riley Grace, we have to hurry." Turning to Esther, Raven said, "I am not Asian, and I don't understand some of your customs. But Esther, I love you, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what you need." Riley Grace listened and added, "You already know what that includes me. I am looking forward to our next sleepover." Esther was touched by their honest and frank comments. Then Esther said, You two better hurry. Your dad is waiting for you. Better take my car. I can pick it up later. Smiling at Raven, Esther gave her a hug as she dropped the keys into her hand. Esther, you're a saint. Riley, Grace, and Raven smiled, hugged Esther, and ran off to the bedroom to retrieve their clothes. Esther watched the sisters hurry off, then turned to Day. You can dress, and I'll take care of the kitchen. Day quickly responded, I never leave a kitchen or a sister in need of help. Day picked up some dishes from the table and moved to the sink. Taking care of small chores with my sister is very rewarding. Day smiled as she continued to gather some of the dishes off the table. Raven and Riley came rushing out of the bedroom. Esther and Day, this was wonderful. We are off to see our dad, and we'll see you later, said Raven as she and Riley Grace rushed out the front door. Esther was amused with their enthusiasm, then quickly turned to the kitchen. Esther watched Day as she moved about. I like this. Sharing the work with my sister is nice. Esther then ran some hot soapy water and quickly washed the dishes. Day quickly dried them as Esther placed them on the counter. The doorbell rang as Esther drained the dishwater. Esther went to the door and checked the peephole. It was Dr. Song. Esther opened the door, looking at the doctor. Esther smiled and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Dr. Song, you have captured the interest of my aunt for the day. Have a fantastic time, and please try to be home by midnight. Esther smiled. Dr. Song looked at Esther and started to plead his case. Esther, can you give me until 2 a.m.? After all, we are going to New York. I'll take care of your Aunt Brandy. Esther looked at the doctor and said, And Brandy is a big girl, and she can take care of herself. You should be careful. New York City can be harsh. I want you both to have fun and come back to Chicago by 2 a.m. Esther smiled at Dr. Song and gave him another kiss on the cheek. Satisfied, Esther said, Please come in. Day is still here. But Raven and Riley Grace left about 6 minutes ago, and Brandy will be ready in a minute now. At that moment, Brandy walked out of the bedroom wearing cream-colored silk slacks and a golden blouse covered with beads fashioned into several tigers. Brandy was holding a cotton jacket folded over her left arm, and it was a silk bronze color that tied the entire outfit together. Wow, Dr. Song said, without giving any thought to his comments. You look fantastic. Brandy looked flattered, but was holding back her appreciation for the comments. Thank you, Jacob. Do you think this will fit the day's events? Dr. Song was still gazing at Brandy and eventually commented, Oh yes, that will fit the entire day's events. You look fantastic. Brandy, while flattered, was still keeping her emotions under control. Well then, should we leave? It's a long way to New York. Day and Esther both hugged Brandy and Dr. Song and told them to enjoy themselves, with the realization mounting that she would soon be in New York City. Brandy started to show greater excitement as she grabbed Dr. Song's arm and walked with him down the hallway to the front door. Esther turned to Day. It's early. Why don't we go to Raven's home and pick up my car? I'm sure they'll be home, and perhaps we can visit just a bit. They said, That sounds great. Do you know where Raven lives? Of course, said Esther. I found her address on the internet, and Raven gave me her phone number this morning. Pulling out her phone, Esther quickly punched a speed dial number and was calling Raven before she had finished her comments today. "Raven," said Esther, switching her conversation from Day to Raven, "Day and I have some time before we go to the market. I thought we might drop by and pick up my car and visit you and Riley Grace for a little while, if you're not busy." Esther sensed hesitation by Raven, but then she quickly responded, "Esther, you and Day are welcome any time. My dad was unexpectedly called away for a few hours, so Riley Grace and I are here with our grandmother. Our plans have changed. It would be nice if you and Day dropped by." Esther quickly responded, "We'll be there in 13 minutes, Esther added, "Let's surprise Riley Grace." Raven quickly responded, "She will love this, Esther. See you soon." The excitement had built up in Raven's voice, and Esther could tell that this would be a very welcomed visit. Day and Esther quickly dressed, putting on some jeans for a day at the market. Both girls chose to wear black blouses, while Day chose a black satin vest with her heavy Gothic themes embroidered onto it. Esther pulled on a lightweight black silk jacket as both grabbed their helmets and left the apartment. In no time at all, they pulled into a circular drive of a fashionable but older house in one of Chicago's historic districts. The girls stopped in front of the entryway to the red brick house and walked up the stairs to the door. Esther rang the doorbell, or more appropriately, she turned the key that rang a bell. It must have been at least 80 years old, but a wonderful design of engineering. The front door soon opened, and Riley Grace burst into excitement. "Esther, Day, you are here!" Riley Grace was excited beyond belief. "Oh, Esther, can you stay a while? I want you to meet my grandmother. She is so wonderful, and I want her to meet you. I told her you were special. Of course, I didn't give her any details." Riley Grace smiled and continued, "You will love her. She is old world, with true values and principles." Riley Grace looked at Esther for a moment. "You know what I mean." Esther was excited by Riley Grace's enthusiasm and said, "Day and I have to be at work in 1 hour, so we do have time to visit, and I would love to meet your grandmother." A hallway door suddenly opened, and Raven stood at the entrance, all smiles. "Day, Esther, you really did get here quickly. It is wonderful to have you here." Raven smiled and said, "This is my grandmother's house. Dad wanted to move us here so that he could better help her with the day-to-day challenges. I'm afraid that Grandma is slowing down just a bit." Raven smiled, then added, "Dad was called away. He'll be back in a few hours." Raven didn't look hopeful as she spoke. "We should go visit Grandmother. I am certain that she is done with breakfast and would love to meet you." Raven led them up a long wooden staircase, and all the while Riley Grace was talking to Esther and Day. As they reached the second floor, Raven spoke. "Grandma is in the first room," and with a soft knock, Raven tried to gain her grandmother's attention. "Come in," said a voice that seemed rather aged. With a hint of calm, Raven poked her head into her grandmother's room. "Grandma, Esther and Day are here. They are my best friends." Raven was smiling as she seldom does. Her face was glowing with excitement. "Well then, child, let them in so that I can meet them." Quickly opening the door all of the way and motioning to Esther and Day to enter the room, Raven stood by their side as they walked up to Raven's grandmother. Well, I'll stop there, and until the next time, take care and be safe.